I've flown over 33,000 miles in just 5 months this year, using points and miles and flying mostly business class. And over that time, I've learned and used some valuable tips I don't hear that often. So in this video, we'll be breaking down the big 7 tips you need to maximize your award flights and travel. Tip number 1, buying points can be worth it. Yes, straight up, if you just buy points and book with those instead, you could already save hundreds to thousands of dollars. For example, on Aeroplan, if you want to book a flight from the West Coast, say Vancouver or Seattle, over to Japan in business class, that could cost you upwards of $4,000. But that same flight, given the availability, will only cost you 55,000 points. Now, given Aeroplan is a transfer partner from basically all of the major currencies like Chase, American Express, Capital One, and Citi, you already have plenty of ways to boost up your points balance. But what if you're just starting out or you're short on points? Well, you can buy points instead. If we go over to Aeroplan and go through the buying points flow, you'll see that 55,000 points will cost you 1,925 Canadian dollars, or an equivalent of 1392 in USD. That's less than half the cost compared to paying straight up with cash. Of course, you'll need to put in the work and find availability, but if you find an award flight that works for you, then buying points might be a good path. And that's especially when it's already worth it buying points straight out like this. Because in this example, you're paying $13.92 for 55,000 points, or paying 2.53 cents per point, which is higher than my valuation of my Chase or American Express points at 2 cents per point. So if that were the case, then it would have made more sense for me to transfer more points from Chase or American Express instead of buying points, especially when these transfers happen instantly. So what if I told you I did buy points for part of my recent trip on my return flight from Japan over to Vancouver, Canada? Well, that's because of tip number 2, which is look out for point sales. Basically, what happened was I booked my trip in segments, so the entire flight wasn't on one single ticket. And when I was going through the process of booking the return flight, I needed to top up my Aeroplan points, and I had 2 choices. Do I transfer points from a valuable Chase or American Express stash, or do I buy points instead? Well, again, I value my Chase and Amex points at about 2 cents per point. So if I'm able to get Aeroplan points for under 2 cents per point, well, then I would buy instead. Combined with the fact that I've burned over 700,000 points this year, booking 2 of my major trips, and that I needed to save some Chase points for upcoming Hyatt stays over in Hawaii, I didn't really want to go lower on my Chase points balance. So if I could buy Aeroplan points for less than 2 cents per point, I would. And boy did I get lucky. So if you do a quick Google search, you'll find plenty of sites that compile all the different promotions going on, like this list on 1 mile at a time, with programs like Life Miles, Flying Blue, and of course, Aeroplan, which had a recent 80% promotional bonus on points purchases, dropping the purchase price down to just 1.43 cents per point. And that's not an outlier either. If we look down the list of past Aeroplan promotions, you can see that they happen every couple months and even go as high as 110% bonus. And although I didn't get that all-time high bonus, I was able to score an 80% bonus during the time that I needed it, buying points at 1.43 cents per point, much lower than my value of Chase and Amex points of 2 cents per point. And as you can see here in my account, I bought 32,000 points as a base, which netted me a promotional bonus of 25.6 thousand points. Just what I needed to finalize my return flight. But speaking of these flights, tip number 3 I have for you is to really know your tools and resources. And I think there are about 5 ways to do so. First, follow blogs. Like I mentioned earlier, there are blogs like 1 Mile at a Time or The Points Guy who have big teams dedicated to all things award travel. And sometimes these bigger companies have closer ties to different airlines and hotels who give them information on new and upcoming offers or changes, which they can release on the date that the embargo is over or their NDA contract is up. There are also more regional sites like Escape Flights or YVR Deals, which are more geared towards cash fares, but still a great resource. I know a lot of people who ended up scoring this 2-in-1 deal flying to Vietnam and Japan for under 800 Canadian dollars or 578 USD, which was a steal, especially on Japan Airlines. Second, of course, is following videos and creators in the award travel and credit card space. And if you find videos like these helpful, then a like and subscribe to help spread the knowledge would be amazing. Thank you. Third, premium newsletters. Now, nothing in this video is sponsored, but I have heard good things about different newsletters like Thrifty Travel Premium, which gets you notifications and deals where one deal alone can already pay for the yearly membership fees. Fourth, premium services. Now, if you have a ton of points but are too lazy to go through all the learnings and steps needed to book a great trip, then you can pay for services like Points.me, which charges $200 per passenger for a full service booking, or any one of the many services listed here on the Flyer Talk thread. And lastly, fifth is to know your search tools and doing it yourself, which is what I did to book my entire trip, and here's my favorites. CowTool. This was a tool that let you search a wide date range up to a year in advance, multiple airports for the origin and destination, and a ton of different helpful filters. And they did this all for free, but unfortunately they decided to voluntarily shut down their service after some comments by an executive over at Aeroplan, which you can learn more about in the corner. Then there's Aeroplan and United. Because I was looking at primarily Star Alliance partners, these were the two sites that I would use. But if you're looking at other partners, then you might want to check out British Airways and American Airlines for oneworld, or Delta and Flying Blue for SkyTeam. For most people, these direct airline search websites are probably the way to go, especially on sites like United that offer you a 30-day calendar view, which makes it so it may not take as much time as you think it might. That said, one of my favorite recent tools is Seats.aero. Again, not sponsored. They allow you to search up to 90 days in advance, but there is a paid version if you want to search up to a year in advance. Now, I go through my entire booking process for this major trip up in the corner, but one very specific case was using Seats.aero to finalize my return flight coming back from Japan. Basically, I bookmarked a search where I went from Tokyo or Osaka over to Vancouver, and I made sure to run that search basically every day to see if there was anything new that popped up. This only takes like 30 seconds or a minute out of each of these times. And I did this because I knew that for most airlines, they release their award flights in two waves. One, almost a year out, and two, when they still have spots open a couple weeks before the actual flight date in hopes of filling their cabins. That's what I hoped for, and that is what I got. I already had a return flight booked, going from Osaka to SFO on United Economy, then SFO back to YVR on Air Canada Economy. But instead, I found 3 business class flights flying direct from Tokyo back to Vancouver. And if I were to pick between the two, it's the latter one hands down. It's a direct flight on a better airline and in business class, all for just 20,000 more points per person. It's a no-brainer. And that's why I needed to top up points buying them with an 80% bonus. But how did that work? Why did I already have a flight, and how did I so seamlessly change that over to this new flight? Well, let's move on to tip number 4, and that's understanding the change and cancellation rules, as well as keeping an eye open for award flights that open within the last couple weeks. So like in the previous tip, once you know your tools, you can just bookmark these search queries and run them every day to see if there's anything new. That might take like a minute or two of your day. And that's because most programs offer you some form of flexibility in how you can change or even cancel these award flights. For example, here on Aeroplan, you're able to change your flights for just 100 Canadian dollars per person, or straight up cancel your flights for 150 Canadian a person, and that means 2 things. One, if you find a great award flight far into the future, but maybe you're only 70 to 80% sure you're able to take it, just book it. If you end up making it, then that's awesome. You scored an amazing flight. If you end up not making it, you might have to change for 100 Canadian dollars or cancel for 150, which is an equivalent of about $72 USD and 108 USD. For me personally, knowing I have that flexibility to change or cancel for just like $100 is huge for me. Because point number 2 is if you can't find the perfect flight, just book one that's subpar for now, maybe in economy class, with the option of changing to a better one when the time comes. Whether that be booking flexible cash fares or using points and knowing you can change or cancel for little to no fee, which is what I did. You see, when I was booking my trip, I was able to find 3 to 4 business class seats flying from Vancouver through LA to Singapore, then onwards from Singapore to Korea and Japan. What I couldn't find was a good business class flight coming back home from Japan. So like we mentioned in tip 3, I set up my search links on C*Aero and checked every day hoping that the flight I wanted would pop up. And because there was something wonky going on with Aeroplan searches, I did also cross-check on the United site just to make sure that these flights were available, because you'll usually see the same availability on the United search and Aeroplan search. Fortunately, I was able to find a better return flight and actually swapped my flight twice. First, I was able to find 3 seats flying ANA from Tokyo straight to Vancouver. Yes, I needed to book my own flight from Osaka to Tokyo, but they only cost about $100 per person and plenty throughout the day, so I wasn't afraid of that section, and I would have been able to save myself time needing to transfer through SFO. Because if you arrive in the US from an international destination without USA pre-clearance, then you need to pick up your checked bags and re-go through security and check-in before you can board your next flight. When you've just gotten off a long flight flying across the Pacific and needing to head on to another flight later that day, that's not really a situation you want to be in. So I saw these 3 seats, double checked on Aeroplan itself that this was available, and then tried to book it, which is when I encountered another issue. So Aeroplan has a new feature that lets you try and change award flights online. The thing is, this feature is in beta, and no matter what I tried, I just could not get this to complete. It would get to the last step, just hang on the loading screen, go back to the home page, and never complete. So I had to call Aeroplan instead. And if you ever called Aeroplan, you know that it's near impossible to get through during the day. So I had to time my call right when they opened at 7 a.m. EST just to get on the phone with some person. And fortunately, it worked. And for some reason, they did not charge me the $100 per person change fee. And honestly, I even asked them if there was any fee attached to it, and they said no. So maybe I got lucky, I'm not too sure, but I was not satisfied. I knew that ANA releases more business class seats closer to the actual flight date. And I even verified checking the next few days, like a week earlier, just to see that that pattern continued. So I kept checking, and remember, this takes like a minute a day maybe. And eventually 2 days before my return flight, I found 2 good options. The first was 3 business class flights flying from Tokyo through Seattle back to Vancouver, and the other was 2 business class flights flying from Tokyo straight to Vancouver. I needed 3 tickets for my parents and I, so I called in fully expecting to book the flight that goes through Seattle, but to my surprise, they said that they saw 3 tickets for the direct flight. And so I double checked with them just to confirm I wasn't dreaming, topped up my points by buying with the 80% bonus, and locked those flights in. This time though, they did charge me the $100 Canadian per person to change this flight, but it was well worth it. I went from flying economy on United and Air Canada to flying business class on ANA. That's a great change. As of the time of this filming, Aeroplan search is a bit wonky, so if you start seeing then not seeing some award space on C*Aero or United, just call in to Aeroplan to double check, because maybe they see something different on their end. Now I know that was a lot, but it's not until you actually go through this process step by step where you learn all the ins and outs. So I hope all this information is really valuable to you watching as well. Basically, have your searches ready and understand your change and cancellation rules. Then maybe lock in some flight that you don't mind taking, and then regularly search to see if a better flight pops up. Now you might have heard me mention cities all along the West Coast. I mean, I flew from Vancouver to LA before going to Singapore, and on the way back, I was considering transfers through SFO or Seattle. And that's because of tip number 5, which is understanding repositioning flights. If you don't live in a big city, then you're probably already familiar, where you have to first fly to a major airport, then from there go on your main leg of your trip. But if you're already in a big city with one of these major airports, know that you don't have to start your main leg of your trip from that airport. I'm on the West Coast, so if it means I need to first reposition to another West Coast city before going on a business class flight across the Pacific, I'd be more than happy to take that choice. Sometimes that extra hop will cost you a couple $100 extra, and sometimes that could bake into your award flight together and not really cost anything extra. For example, if you take a look at this flight, which connects from Tokyo through Seattle back to Vancouver, it's 110,000 points. If we book the direct flight instead, it's also 110,000 flights, and that's what I found to be the case across most of the flights I've seen on Aeroplan. because Star Alliance covers so many awesome airlines, from Singapore Airlines to ANA, EVA, and Asiana, to strong domestic airlines like United and Air Canada. In a lot of these cases, it's almost the same price if you're repositioning or not. And unlike arriving to the US from an international destination, if you're coming from Canada, which usually does have USA pre-clearance, you don't have to take your bags out and go through the whole process again. It'll get shipped straight to your final destination, which was new to me. I thought Canada was considered an international destination, but that left me more time to explore the Polaris Lounge in LAX, which was new to me because I thought Canada was looped in with typical international arrivals. But that left me more time to check out the Polaris Business Class Lounge in LAX, which is probably one of the top 2 lounges I've ever been to, especially because of their a la carte menu in their dining room where everything tasted pretty good, as well as a lounge that wasn't packed, given you can't get in with just any credit card, and even sleeping pods that you can book. But speaking of lounges, the next tip I have for you, tip number 6, is that having multiple cards with overlapping lounge benefits can be good. Because I was traveling in a group of 4, the only way I can have all of us get into a lounge with one credit card was if I used the Venture X with its unlimited guests towards priority pass lounges. Unfortunately, there were 2 cities I wanted lounge access, and they didn't have any good priority pass lounges, only Plaza Premium. So what I've learned, and this is my personal experience, I'm not sure if there's any official written rules about this, is that because I had the Venture X and the Amex Platinum, which each give you access for the card holder and 2 guests, they were able to put 1 person on one card and 3 people on the other card, letting all 4 of us into the Plaza Premium Lounge. I did this first at the Plaza Premium Lounge at the US Departures Terminal of the Vancouver Airport, which is a pretty nice looking lounge with some decent quality food. I know these aren't the best pictures, but I was really tired. But hey, the food tasted great. And then again at the Blossoms Lounge in Singapore before my short hop over to Malaysia, with things like breakfast items like turkey bacon and eggs, to freshly made laksa and vegetarian noodles. And so the learning here is that if you are traveling in groups, then having overlapping lounge access on your different cards can come in handy, because you don't want to just go in with a portion of your party and leave the rest outside. Alright, so the next tip I want to break into 2, because although they're great opportunities to snag some award flights, they aren't something that you can rely on every single time. First, know that different airlines might have spikes in availability at different times of the year, usually according to the different seasons. For example, that's the case for ANA, where from time to time, they'll swap which planes fly to and from which cities. In this case, swapping the plane from the SFO to Tokyo route to their 777, which also has the new The Room business class seats, and at the same time releasing more of them. And it seems like they do this every season or 2, adjusting to demand without any prior warning. The best you can do is be ready on when you can fly, how many tickets you need to buy, and book right when you see that news. And second, this is what I've learned secondhand from a friend, is that if you booked an award flight and they have to change your flight for any reason, they'll usually give you an option to change to a different flight if it accommodates you better. The great thing is, this happens whether you bought the flight or use points for the flight, because they'll let you change that flight to other ones which may not have award availability. Again, not something you can regularly count on, but know that schedules can change time to time and can be a benefit and in your favor. Now, that was a lot of info and probably my most jam-packed video ever. But the thing is, if you don't have a proper credit card setup, then it might take years for you to even book your very first flight. If you want to shortcut that process and be flying for cheap before you know it, you need a strategy. So go on and check out this video for the only 4 steps you need.